Picture this. You're facing the biggest decision of your life. Everyone around you is giving you advice based on what they think is right or wrong. Your parents want you to be safe. Your friends want you to be successful. Society wants you to be normal. But what if I told you that every single person giving you advice is thinking at a lower level than you're capable of? What if there's a way to make decisions that transcends good and evil entirely? 150 years ago, Friedrich Nietzsche discovered the ultimate thinking framework, one so advanced that it separates philosophers from everyone else. He called it beyond good and evil, and it's the final piece of becoming truly free. Look, I'm about to teach you how to think like the top 1% of minds in human history. Your father didn't teach you this because he was still trapped in good, evil thinking. Your teachers sure as hell didn't because they needed you to follow rules, not question them. And 99% of men will live their entire lives making decisions like children instead of philosophers. But here's what will blow your mind. This isn't about becoming amoral. It's about becoming so sophisticated in your thinking that you operate from a level most people can't even see. So, why am I sharing this with you? Because once you understand how to think beyond good and evil, you become impossible to manipulate. You make decisions based on what serves your highest potential, not what makes others comfortable. And that, my friend, is the difference between being a follower and being a leader. The trap of binary thinking. Here's the first truth your father never told you. Most people think in binaries because it's easier than thinking clearly. Good versus evil. Right versus wrong. Success versus failure. Love versus hate. But reality doesn't work in binaries. Reality is complex, nuanced, contextual. And the man who can only think in black and white will always be outmaneuvered by the man who sees the full spectrum. Nietzsche wrote, "There are no moral phenomena at all, only a moral interpretation of phenomena." Translation: nothing is inherently good or evil. These are interpretations we layer on top of reality based on our values, culture, and circumstances. Think about it. Is ambition good or evil? Depends on what you're ambitious for and how you pursue it. Is loyalty good or evil? Depends on who you're loyal to and whether they deserve it. Is honesty good or evil? Depends on the context and the consequences of your truth. This isn't moral relativism. This is sophisticated thinking, the ability to evaluate situations based on their actual complexity instead of simple categories. The 3 levels of moral thinking. Your father probably never told you this, but there are 3 distinct levels of moral thinking, and most people never leave the first one. Level 1. Rule following. Good, evil thinking. This action is always wrong because the rule says so. This is what good people do. I should be moral because authority figures told me to. This is how children think, and unfortunately, how most adults think. Level 2. Consequence thinking. Smart, stupid thinking. This action serves my goals. This choice creates better outcomes. I should act strategically because it works. This is how successful people think. Better than level 1, but still limited. Level 3. Value creation. Beyond good and evil. This action serves my highest potential and contributes to something greater than myself. This choice aligns with the kind of person I'm becoming. I act from my own consciously chosen values because I've taken responsibility for my own moral development. This is how philosophers think. This is what Nietzsche meant by beyond good and evil. Why society keeps you at level 1. Here's something your father definitely didn't teach you. Society benefits when you stay at level 1 thinking. Rule followers are predictable. They do what they're told without questioning whether it makes sense. They feel guilty when they break rules and grateful when they follow them. But men who think beyond good and evil, They're dangerous to systems that depend on compliance. They make decisions based on their own values, not inherited rules. They can't be manipulated through guilt or fear. That's why you were never taught this, because conscious men are harder to control. Think about every institution in your life: school, work, government, even religion. They all function better when people follow rules without thinking deeply about whether those rules serve their highest potential. But you're not here to make institutions comfortable. You're here to become who you're capable of becoming, beyond good and evil in real life. Let me show you what this looks like in situations you actually face. Career decision. Level 1 thinking. I should take this job because it's the responsible thing to do. Good men provide for their families. Level 3 thinking. Does this job align with my values and long-term vision? Does it allow me to create value while growing into the person I'm meant to become? Can I serve my family better by taking a risk that could lead to greater fulfillment and success? Relationship conflict. Level 1 thinking. I should apologize because fighting is wrong. Good men avoid conflict. Level 3 thinking. Is this conflict serving the growth of our relationship? Am I apologizing to avoid discomfort or because I genuinely made a mistake? Will avoiding this conversation lead to deeper problems later? Business ethics. Level 1 thinking. I shouldn't compete aggressively because it's not nice. Level 3 thinking. How can I compete in a way that pushes everyone to excel? How can I win while creating value for everyone involved? What standards do I want to set in my industry? See the difference? Level 1 follows rules. Level 3 creates principles. The responsibility of freedom. But here's where beyond good and evil gets really challenging. When you stop following external rules, you become responsible for creating internal ones. Most people prefer rule following because it's easier. Someone else has done the thinking. You just have to comply. But when you think beyond good and evil, you have to examine every belief you've inherited. Choose values consciously instead of unconsciously. Take responsibility for the consequences of your choices. Create your own moral framework based on your highest potential. This is terrifying for most people. It's much easier to say, I'm just following orders, or that's what good people do, than to say, I chose this because it serves my vision of who I want to become. But that responsibility is also the source of your power. The man who creates his own values can't be manipulated by other people's moral judgments. The art of perspective taking. Here's one of the most advanced skills Nietzsche taught: the ability to see any situation from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Most people get locked into one viewpoint and defend it emotionally. But the man who thinks beyond good and evil can step outside his own perspective and see the situation clearly. Example: your business partner wants to take the company in a direction you disagree with. Single perspective: he's wrong and I'm right. He doesn't understand the market. Multiple perspectives: his perspective. What does he see that I might be missing? Customer perspective: what would serve them best? Long-term perspective: what decision will we be proud of in 10 years? Strategic perspective: what does this reveal about our partnership? This isn't about being indecisive. It's about making decisions based on complete information instead of limited viewpoints. The test of higher values. So how do you know if you're thinking beyond good and evil? Here's Nietzsche's test. Can you hold two opposing ideas in your mind and still function? Can you believe in justice while understanding that life isn't fair? Can you value loyalty while recognizing when it's not deserved? Can you pursue success while accepting that failure teaches important lessons? Can you love someone while seeing their flaws clearly? The man who thinks in binaries gets paralyzed by these contradictions. The man who thinks beyond good and evil uses them as fuel for more sophisticated decision-making. Real wisdom isn't choosing between opposites. It's integrating them, creating your own moral code. But here's the practical application. How do you create your own values instead of just inheriting them? Step 1. Question everything. Every moral belief you have came from somewhere. Your parents, religion, culture, media. Ask yourself, do I believe this because I've examined it or because I was taught it? Step 2. Identify your core values. What qualities do you most admire in yourself and others? Not what you think you should admire, but what you actually respect. Excellence, courage, creativity, honesty, growth. Step 3. Test your values against reality. Do your stated values align with your actual choices? If you claim to value health but eat garbage, you don't actually value health. You value the idea of valuing health. Step 4. Refine through experience. Your values should evolve as you grow. The moral code that served you at 20 might need updating at 30. Stay conscious about what you're optimizing for. The danger of fake sophistication. Now here's the warning Nietzsche would give you. Don't confuse beyond good and evil with anything goes. Some people use sophisticated thinking as an excuse for selfishness. They say morality is relative to justify hurting others or avoiding responsibility. That's not beyond good and evil, that's below good and evil. True sophistication leads to higher standards, not lower ones. When you create your own values consciously, you typically end up with more demanding principles than society's basic rules. The man who thinks beyond good and evil often lives more ethically than the rule follower because his ethics come from wisdom rather than fear. Here's the ultimate freedom. Here's what most people don't understand about Nietzsche's concept. Beyond good and evil isn't about rejecting morality. It's about graduating to a higher form of it. Instead of following rules created by others, you create principles aligned with your highest potential. Instead of doing good because you're supposed to, you do good because you've chosen to become the kind of person who naturally does good. Instead of avoiding evil because you're afraid of punishment, you avoid it because it doesn't serve the person you're becoming. This is the ultimate freedom. Making choices from wisdom rather than fear, from vision rather than rules, from your own consciously developed character rather than external expectations. The philosopher's edge. When you think beyond good and evil, you develop what I call the philosopher's edge. You can't be guilt-tripped because you've examined your values consciously. You can't be peer-pressured because you're not seeking approval from people operating at a lower level of thinking. You can't be manipulated through fear because you've accepted responsibility for your own moral development. You make better decisions because you're considering more factors and longer-term consequences. You inspire others because people are naturally drawn to someone who thinks clearly and acts consciously. Most importantly, you become truly free because you're no longer enslaved to other people's definitions of right and wrong.
Your reality check.
So here's your reality check. How many of your daily decisions are based on rules you've never questioned? How many times do you avoid doing something because it's not what good people do, without examining whether it would actually serve your goals and values? How many opportunities do you miss because you're thinking in black and white instead of seeing the full spectrum of possibilities? The uncomfortable truth: most men never develop their own moral framework. They just adopt whatever system they inherited and wonder why they feel empty following rules that don't align with their potential. But you don't have to be most men. You can learn to think like a philosopher. The integration challenge. Here's where everything we've covered in this series comes together. God is dead taught you that old certainties are gone and you must create meaning. Slave versus master morality showed you the difference between inherited and chosen values. Will to power revealed that real strength comes from mastering yourself. Eternal recurrence forced you to examine whether your life is worth living infinitely. Beyond good and evil gives you the thinking tools to create a life worth repeating. This isn't just philosophy. This is a complete framework for conscious living, a way to make decisions that serve your highest potential while contributing to something greater than yourself. Your final choice. So, what are you going to do with this knowledge? You can go back to thinking in binaries, following rules without questioning them, making decisions based on what others expect instead of what serves your potential. Or, you can start thinking like a philosopher, creating your own values, making decisions based on wisdom rather than rules, becoming the kind of man who naturally does good because he's developed the character to see clearly and act consciously. Here's what Nietzsche understood. The highest morality isn't about following someone else's code. It's about becoming someone whose instincts are so refined that you naturally choose what serves the greatest good. Not because you have to, but because you've trained yourself to want what's truly valuable. The question isn't whether you're good or evil. The question is, are you sophisticated enough to think beyond those categories? Are you developed enough to create your own principles? Are you conscious enough to take responsibility for your own moral development? Are you strong enough to make decisions that serve your highest potential, even when others don't understand them? Because once you learn to think beyond good and evil, you realize something incredible. You were never meant to follow someone else's rules. You were meant to become wise enough to create better ones. The choice, as it has always been, is yours. But now you have the tools to choose consciously. If this series has changed how you think about morality, meaning, and what it means to be a conscious man, I need you to do something. Subscribe right now and share this with someone who needs to hear it, because this isn't just philosophy. This is the mental framework that separates men who create their own reality from men who accept whatever reality is handed to them. You now have Nietzsche's most dangerous ideas. You understand how to create meaning in a meaningless world. You know the difference between borrowed and chosen values. You've learned what real power looks like. You've faced the ultimate life test, and you've been given the tools to think beyond the categories that limit most people. The question is, what will you build with this knowledge? The world needs more men who think clearly, act consciously, and create value from wisdom rather than following rules from fear. Don't let this be just another video you watched.